GW's mantra for the new 10th edition of Warhammer 40k, simplified not simple, is one I really hope they do stick to, because everything we've seen of 10th edition so far is sounding, I will be honest, incredibly positive and fun for the players and also for the game. And this past week we've been shown a few more details of the upcoming rules, and again, it does really seem that their aim is to just lessen the amount of bookkeeping and page turning you'll need to do, and whilst keeping some complexity in the game, just simplifying it all down and making sure it's all in a nice, easy place to find. And so, with that in mind, let's see what they've shown off for the upcoming detachments in 10th edition. The article states by saying that the index cards, which we all knew were coming as the new edition hit, would come along with one detachment each for each faction, with some new ones coming as the various codexes got released and the edition just kind of moved forward and developed. So at least to begin with, it seems that everything is going to be rather simple and straightforward, which when a new edition hits and everyone's trying to learn everything and get the rules sorted in their head and they don't want to just over bloat everything, I think is a really good idea, even if it does end up being a little bit samey and not boring, but like there won't be as much sort of differentiation between armies as you may see sort of now in the tail end of 9th edition, but I think for the start of a new edition, it's easier and more sensible to just keep things a bit simpler. And one of the core things they've said is sort of their defining feature of these new detachments is that they are designing them all so that all the detachment rules must fit on 2 pages. And I think this is really fantastic news, to be honest. Hopefully, if nothing else, it means there will be no more flicking back and forth between a book or even between multiple books to find out exactly what your army can and cannot do. When it comes to the armies themselves, there seems to be a set of rules which come with the detachment, so depending on what detachment you take, and as I said, there will just be one for each faction to begin with, but presumably as more detachments come out, these will have differing rules to go along with them. But on top of that, there is also a base faction rule. So, for example, Tyranids have got their synapse, the Guard have got their orders, and for the Adeptus Astartes, it is the Oath of Moment rule. And as you can see on your screen now, this gives you a really rather nice buff of allowing you to choose one enemy unit, and until your next command phase, you get to reroll hits and wounds against it. Now, yes, this does seem potentially mind-blowingly strong, but we are all still in the mindset of 9th edition, and in a 9th edition army and a 9th edition codex, yes, this would probably be fairly broken, but you have to remember, going into 10th they've said there is going to be a lessening of AP. In general, lethality is supposed to be dropping. So whilst this is still a very good rule, I don't think it's going to be quite as scary as it is in our 9th edition mindset. I really don't think this is going to be a rule where you put it on a unit and you may as well just pick that unit up from the table because they're just going to die from all the firepower that they take, which is certainly something that would be the case in 9th edition. They also state in the article that rerolls in general are much less common in 10th edition. So yes, as I said, whilst this is going to be a very unique, powerful buff, it's not like the rest of your army is going to be rerolling a load of stuff anyway. So to me, this rule seems to be powerful, but very focused and specific. So you can only choose one enemy unit, and you basically have to put all of your firepower into them to try and get rid of them, or else you're gonna not get the full benefits of this buff. So it is very focused and specific. And it's also really fluffy for Marines with their sort of tactical surgical precision strikes. So I really do like this. I think it is very fitting for Marines, and it's going to give them a good amount of firepower and a good amount of kick without hopefully just being completely broken on the tabletop. In terms of the actual detachments themselves, they also come with a unique set of rules. As mentioned, just the one detachment for each faction to start. But as I said, hopefully as 10th edition goes on, this will develop and more ones will come out. But the one they show off today is for the Tyranids, and this is their Hyper Adaptations rule for their Invasion Fleet Detachment. And what this does is it allows you at the start of the first battle round to choose one of 3 rules for the battle. So already this is kind of showing off how adaptable the Tyranids can be depending on their enemy. The fact that you can choose this after you've seen what your opponent is bringing, what sort of units and models he has, so that you can best counter them in the fight to come. But what this does is essentially gives you an option of 3 different rules, and you can choose it before the game begins. Swarming Instincts gives you the sustained hits 1 rule against enemy infantry or swarms, and what that is it gives you an extra hit on a critical hit, which is the new term for describing unmodified hit rolls of 6. So essentially, to put it in a term we will all recognise from 9th edition, this pretty much means extra hit on 6s to hit, so exploding 6s against infantry and swarms. Hyper-aggression, on the other hand, gives you the lethal hits rule, which again plays into the new critical hits. This lets you auto-wound on vehicles and monsters, so again, to put it in 9th edition terms, this is essentially auto-wounding on 6s to hit against vehicles and monsters. And then finally, there is the Hive Predators option, which gives you the precision ability when a critical hit is scored. They don't go into what precision does, but we can sort of guess, because they also mention at the end of the article something about characters leading units. So to me anyway, it seems like, as we had back in 7th edition and before, characters may be able to join units and, get Lookout Sir style protection from them because they can't be targeted while they're in the unit, and also hand out some very localized buffs to them. And it seems to me that this precision ability will allow the Tyranids, when they score a critical hit, so when they score a 6 to hit, they will probably be allowed to allocate attacks to that character rather than to the unit. That to me would kind of make sense based on it being the anti-character rule and what we see later on in the article from them mentioning characters joining units. So that's what I'm imagining the precision ability will be for this rule. I mean, in general, it seems like there's some really nice options for the Tyranids in this detachment rule. It's going to make them super easy to sort of play and adapt to the opponent depending on what you find facing you on the battlefield. And again, it's really fluffy and thematic for how the Tyranids operate, so another big win for 10th edition in my books here. On top of that, detachments also come with a unique set of stratagems. Instead of the 30 or so that we saw in the 9th edition codexes, which was, let's be honest, way too much, there is now 12 core stratagems that all players will have access to, and this is presumably going to be things like an auto-pass battle shock, or maybe a reroll, that sort of thing. And then in the detachments themselves, there will be 6 bespoke ones for that detachment. The one they show off today is for the Space Marines Gladius Task Force detachment, and this is the Armour of Contempt. Again, I really like that it's so nicely laid out. It's really easy to see and understand when you can use it, what effects it has, and who it targets. And for this one, it is used when an enemy unit has selected a target. You choose one of your units that was selected as a target for an enemy attack or shooting, and the effect is that the enemy's AP for those attacks is reduced by 1. So again, to put it simply, if your enemy fires with a squad which are all armed with AP-1 guns and they target your unit of Marines, you use this on the Marines and the enemy guns would go from AP-1 to AP-0. It's nice, simple, has a lot of strength to it, but again, does have its limitations, and to me, that is exactly what stratagems should be all about. So again, another really big win for 10th edition. The final thing they talk about in the article is enhancements, which if you are an AOS player you will recognise the term. The enhancements replace the old relics and warlord traits of 9th edition, and they give you a unique list of upgrades for each detachment. So again, everything seems to be very detachment focused, which is really good, but you can give these to your characters within that detachment. The one they show off in the article is the Artificer Armor enhancement, which you can give to an Astartes model, and this gives them a 2-up save and a 5-up feel no pain. As a quick aside, seeing the words feel no pain back in the vernacular is an absolute joy. I know pretty much everyone still called it feel no pain, even through 8th and 9th edition, but seeing it actually back as a term is so nice to see. Universal Special Rules are back, and I could not be happier. It is a fairly straightforward enhancement, obviously based on an old relic rather than a warlord trait style ability, but you can see how powerful it's potentially going to be, especially tied into the Armour of Contempt stratagem if you decide to use that on your character. But of course, to go back to an earlier point, if characters can go in units, that is also another huge boost to their durability, because they're going to basically have a super souped up lookout sir, because it's likely they will only be able to be targeted if you kill the rest of the squad they're with, or with a rule-like precision, as we see in the Turinids hyper adaptations. So there is a lot of change coming, but I think in general, so far, they seem to be doing fairly well in terms of sticking to their mantra of simplifying everything down, making everything easier to understand and easier to find and easier to sort of assess when you're building and playing a game, but still keeping hopefully a bit of the complexity and sort of strategy as you're sort of building your list and putting things together, especially as the game progresses in terms of 10th edition and some more detachments open up, so that you really can have a choice of which one you want to build your army around and what detachment buff is going to be sort of best for your force. But in general, everything that I've seen, as I said, for 10th edition so far, I love. I really do. I think it looks like everything that I could have wanted from an edition of 40k, they seem to be putting into this edition. I love the simplified 2-page detachment rules. I love the new limited style of stratagems. I love the idea of characters being able to attach themselves to squads again. If the rest of 10th edition shapes up in the same sort of vein as these previews they've shown off so far, I do genuinely think this could be the best edition of 40k we've seen in a really, really long time. But as always, I would love to know what you think. Do you like the changes we've seen so far? And also, can you see any potential problems with it, or is there anything that is making you worried about the direction that 10th edition is taking? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.